Thanks so much, Sebastian, and thanks for having me here. Great to meet all of you, even if virtually. Hopefully you can all see my slides. I'm Sara Chrisman. I'm a pediatrician and adolescent medicine provider and a researcher. And I'm here today to talk to you about a program that we've been developing over the past few years called Mentally Strong, and hopefully show you a little bit of how this could pertain to your own workouts and your own training as you're going into the marathon or whatever that you're training for. Um, so first of all, I'll say it takes a village. So I work a lot of different places. So I'm a researcher at Seattle Children's. I'm also a researcher at UW. As many faculty, I have appointments at both places, and I work a lot with an organization called the Sports Institute at UW Medicine, who's sponsored this work, and it's been a real joy to partner with them. You'll see on here Carla Landis and Leah Cantor and David Bridgers, who come from the Sports Institute, but then also Sam Brown, Christine McDonald, and Stan Herring, who provided leadership. This work is also in partnership with Kevin Altschuler, who's a clinical psychologist with the Beard here. He's in rehab medicine. It's been wonderful to work with. And then we've had multiple students and qualitative researcher Beth Bollinger, who works with me, and then Dane Ramshaw is my coder. So I just have to put all of that out there. This is a lot of work that many people have worked on, and I'm just one of the people bringing this to you. And this is also funded by, we have some funds from the Garvey Institute, and we also have some funds from the Prentice family, who've been very generous in helping us do this work. So why this work? Why am I talking to you about something called mental strength and mentally strong? This is to sort of show you that many people have experienced this. You hit the wall and you're running a race, and then all of a sudden you feel like you've got nothing left. You're just I can't go another inch, and then you see the finish line, and all of a sudden you can run again. And emotions are a big part of sport, so that there are all these other pieces that you're working on and you're training and getting stronger. But the emotional side is very powerful, and the wall is just one piece of it. There's many other things that I want to talk about today, but I feel like as runners, that may be something that most people identify with. So when you hit the wall, you have sort of two options, the way that I think about it. And I will say I didn't choose the term mental fortitude for a reason, because I think that actually sounds like grit. Uh, I am actually much more interested in resilience. And so when you hit the wall, you can fight your body and say you're going to do this no matter what, or you can have a conversation with your body. And my goal today is to convince you that you should be having a conversation with your body, because you will never win that fight. And that really, I'm a physician, I'm a researcher. There is no division between our mind and our body. And the way that we perceive it is we perceive our conscious mind and our subconscious mind in our body, and that it's actually helpful to have more of awareness of that. And so we'll talk more about how this plays a role in your life as an athlete. So what is mental strength? Well, this is a term we chose because we felt like you can build these abilities just in the same way that you can build physical strength, just in the same way that you can get faster. You can get better at being resilient. So we've defined mental strength as really being this component, both of sort of starts with emotional awareness. So you have to know that you're having an emotional reaction. And emotional reactions happen in your body. People will say, oh God, I'm really stressed out. But what they mean is I'm feeling my heartbeat fast, I feel very jittery, I feel sensitive to light and sound, all of these physical responses that are caused by chemicals dumped into your bloodstream because of an external trigger. And so emotions happen in your body, and you have to then notice and say, oh, wow, I'm really anxious, or I'm really angry, or I'm really scared. And that awareness is number one. And then you have to accept it and say, okay, I need to do something about this. So I'm really angry because that guy just fouled me really badly. So I need to go and take a lap, or I need to go and splash some water in my face, or I need to go and, joke with a friend, because that will help this chemical reaction calm down and move through, and I can get to the next moment. And then the commitment is the last piece, and that's that you can then train this. You can figure out, how do I get myself in an optimal space, that I'm not going to be thrown over by an emotional reaction in the moment. And that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today. And that's what we've sort of built. So why should you work on mental strength? Well, I think, many of us have probably been watching the Olympics, and I think it's pretty profound to watch Simone Biles and to think 4 years ago, she had everything, physical, the technical, the tactical, and she got the twisties and she couldn't do it. And so the mental game can make or break your performance. You sit there and you can be everything else. So the physical, you're strong enough, you're fast enough, the technical, you've really like perfected, how you're going to do this swing. The tactical, like how do I have to change this for this setting? But that's the mental game is a huge piece of your performance. And professional athletes know this. And so it's been fascinating. When we started this work, we began by talking with youth athletes and coaches, but then also college athletes and coaches. And every college team, every college athletic department includes this component of working on the emotional side of sport, the mental game, because they know that it matters. So many people don't know this, but the Seahawks actually had a sports psychologist who worked with them for years, Michael Gervais. This is one slide where they actually describe him as a psychologist, but many times they have not. And he actually would do meditation with the team, but he wouldn't call it meditation. He wouldn't call it mindfulness. He would say, we're working on focus, which the truth is that is what mindfulness is. So mindfulness is saying, the past is history, the future is a mystery. The moment is all that matters. And so being in the moment is the zone, it's flow. And so when you frame meditation and mindfulness about improving your focus, then it feels like that's an athletic endeavor that I can work on. When you say mindfulness is about relaxation, then it does not feel relevant to sport. So many people, such as Michael Gervais, who've worked in this space, say, "Oh, this is the way that I need to talk about this to make it matter to Pete Carroll," and it does matter to Pete Carroll because he's standing on the sideline with Michael Gervais for a reason. And many, many other examples of this across the sports field. So you see Tom Brady, who's renowned for meditation and Tai Chi and other ways of focusing. And this is the New Zealand All Blacks, who's one of the most famous rugby teams. They use something called red to blue, which is the idea of like, when you're in this redhead, you're not going to be competing successfully. So you're tight, inhibited, overcompensated, anxious, aggressive, desperate. You need to get to this blue head, loose, expressive, accurate, on task, in the moment. And that's what the goal of building resilience is about this. How do we move through tough moments to get to a better place? So you can say, well, I just, if I have a stressed moment, I'll just take a few breaths. It's fine. But the truth is, you have to practice this because one of the examples we like to give is that, if you're trying to learn how to ride a bike, you shouldn't do it when there's a tiger running after you. And so you need to practice this because everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. It's one of my favorite quotes. So sports have emotional moments. It's not if it's going to happen, it's when. So you're going to lose a game, you're going to miss that shot, you're going to trip in the middle of your 100-meter Olympic trial and not ever get to like have that moment back. You're going to have someone foul you and get really angry. It's physical. You're going to be on the pitcher's mound and worry about the thousands of people watching you that maybe I actually don't know how to throw the ball anymore. So these things are going to happen, and you need to be prepared and to practice for these things happening. So how do you build psychological resilience? Well, when we started this work, I'm a researcher. I believe in building off of the work that exists. And so we use the biopsychosocial model, which has been around for years. It comes from George Engel from 1977 and fits really well to psychological resilience. So the biologic piece is you need to fuel your body. So if you aren't getting good sleep, if you're not getting good nutrition, hydration, if you're not allowing your body time to recover, you're not going to be in a good place emotionally, and you're not going to be able to get through a tough moment. And we've seen this, you see this happen time and time again. And it's something that we don't talk about enough. Psychological piece. So as we talked about, developing awareness, but then also developing strategies about how can you manage that emotional crisis? How can you bring yourself to a more relaxed state, focused state? And then the social piece, and this is fascinating, is that when we started to do this work, many of these things at some small level, coaches or athletes will do some of these kinds of coping strategies intuitively. And certainly once they get to be collegiate athletes or professional athletes, they've almost always learned some of these skill sets. And the social piece is something that we all do inherently. So you get fired from your job, what do? You go home, you call a friend. So that's social support. We know I am having an emotional crisis. I need someone who is able to be my stable rock and pull me through. And it may be, even small moments. So, that friend on your team misses the goal, you put a hand on his back. No big, we all could have been there, no big deal. So biopsychosocial, this is where we start. And so this is the big theory, and I'm now going to say, how do we then start to think about how do we actually do this practically? Because, obviously you feel like, oh, that's too many things to think about. So I'm going to focus on one thing in each category. So for biologic, I'm going to focus on sleep. And partly that's because I work with adolescents, I work with high school kids, and it's almost zero of them get enough sleep. And it's a huge area that we can focus on. So Matthew Walker, who does a lot of work in the sleep field, says that sleep is the performance enhancing drug that we do not abuse enough. So more sleep is a huge area to focus on. And so first we know sleep. So what's the evidence? Well, we know sleep impacts well-being and mental health. So duration and quality of sleep are associated with greater resilience and are also associated with improved mood. And certainly there is a bi-directional relationship here. So if you struggle with anxiety and depression, those impact sleep. If you are not feeling safe, your body will not let you fully relax. And we also know that if you don't get good night's sleep, you're not going to feel well the next day. And we could spend an entire talk talking about sleep. So I'm not going to tell you in depth about all of this, but just to say that sleep needs to be in one chunk. So naps don't really count. You have to do all of your sleeping together so you can get into these really deep layers of sleep that are restorative. Sleep has more functions than just rest. Sleep is also how your brain lays down new information, which as an athlete is particularly important. If you're learning new things, then you have to put them into your memory bank and also kind of practice them, like really cement them. And we also do better going to bed and getting up at the same time every day. And that is because your body not only releases things like melatonin to help you fall asleep, it releases things like cortisol to help you wake up. And so if your body's like, wait, when am I supposed to go to sleep? That doesn't work very well. Circadian rhythm is also fascinating and a whole other lecture, so we're not going to get into that. But and then the last thing I'll say is that uh, little changes can make a big difference. And so I think people sometimes think, oh well, my sleep is just not even worth worrying about because there's so many things I'm doing wrong. And any little change, 15 minutes more of sleep a night can make a difference. So the thing that is very motivating about sleep is the performance aspect. And so I find that when you're talking about sleep and people can sometimes feel like it's almost like they're being blamed for not getting good sleep or that it's a stressful thing. And I would think about it more in the opposite way, which is that, wow, sleep is something I can do to help myself perform better. So there's a lot of the research in this area is done using sleep deprivation. It's just easier to study. And so there's some of the most data is around accuracy. So many sports have an accuracy component. So for example, free throws in basketball have an accuracy component. But some sports are entirely about accuracy, like darts and shooting. And accuracy is very sensitive to sleep deprivation, that if you go from average of 7 hours of sleep to an average of less than 6, your accuracy drops from 98% to 50%. Reaction time, also very sensitive, anaerobic power. injury rate. I mean, this is really interesting work that with sleep deprivation, people have higher injury rate. What this is this, balance? Is this your response time? Is this your basically your appreciation of space? It's entirely unclear. It may be many things. Like we definitely lose some of the ability to focus when we're not well slept, and you can look actually like someone who has problems with attention. And then perceived effort. So, when you go back to that, like hitting the wall, fatigue is a very complicated concept that we don't completely understand, and it's not actually related to things like lactic acid or carbon dioxide or things that you think it would be. So when you have not slept, you actually become exhausted more quickly. And this is just to show you some of that data about likelihood of injury and average amount of sleep, which I still think is fascinating. So then the psychologic, this is really where you bring in cognitive behavioral therapy theory, which is grounding a lot of this work. So we know that your thoughts and your feelings and your behavior are all connected. There's many areas in which you can work on this with visualization, which is mental practice, or positive reflection, which is essentially kind of cognitive reframing or sort of trying to see the positive side. I'm going to focus on mindfulness because I think that's where the most data is. And it also, we found talking to athletes and coaches and many people in the sports field, this fits so well with sport. You're already thinking about your breathing in many sports, such as running, such as swimming. And so that thinking about this as a way into really connecting to the moment can be really powerful. So why mindfulness? Well, there's actually great data on mindfulness related to resilience, related to mental health. It decreases, when you have a greater sense of mindfulness, you have less of so if you're in this moment, you're not in the past and you're not in the future. And regret is in the past and anxiety is in the future. So being in the present moment allows you to let go of some emotional reactions that are not happening right now. So this can be very powerful, especially when you develop the skill set, and it is a skill set. So becoming good at mindfulness means that you can get into this state more quickly. But you can't do that just based on doing it when you're stressed. You have to practice this. And there is data that mindfulness impacts performance, particularly around accuracy. So dart throwing, shooting, these areas where you need really concentrated focus. This can be a very powerful tool. Some people talk about it as like a superpower, that they have practiced this ability to focus. It's harder to study in general. Like, how do you study someone, how focused they were during the marathon? That's a much more challenging thing. But there are certainly ways that this would impact all sports that you're participating in. And then our last category is social. And as I said, we are really social animals, so that when we are in emotional distress, this is a common thing that we immediately reach out for. And it is something that you can also build. So you can develop social support. And there's other areas here too that I'm not going to spend as much time on today, but that goals and roles, especially when you're on a team, aligning goals, making sure that you all have the same goals, that is also helpful. Then when you face a challenge, you know how to respond to it. But I'm going to focus a little bit on social support because I think that's also where we find some of the best evidence. So why social support? Well, social support impacts mental health because it seems to buffer the impact of stress on mood. And for many of us who've been in a stressful situation, so I'm a doctor. I did residency. Residency is pretty stressful, and it was very helpful to have my co-residents who I got to know very well, because when a stressful thing happened, we had each other to turn to, and many people intuitively do this. So the military similarly supports that kind of strong connection between military recruits, because it knows that helps people get through tough moments. It's why many people choose to have a partner in life, because this helps buffer those challenges when you face them. And we do know that it also specifically decreases sport-related anxiety. So having a team that is cohesive can actually make you better athletes. And we know that social support also impacts performance. So that we have articles showing that those athletes who have more report more social support have greater self-confidence, improved performance, and there's also evidence that it impacts fatigue, physical discomfort, and exertion. And as I said, fatigue is this concept that we don't completely understand. So this isn't that surprising that there are many things that actually impact fatigue. So this is just to show you, so I'm talking to you today more about these broad concepts. We've actually been in this space developing coach education for high school athletes. And so this is just the sort of draft version of like the education that we're developing. And it's much more extensive than what we're talking about today, because we're also trying to teach coaches how do you help an athlete who's having an emotionally stressful moment, and what are some of the tools that you can use, and how do you lead activities with your team to become better, to become more mentally strong. And so that we walk coaches through the stress response, explaining kind of what emotions are, and then talking about, when someone is emotionally stressed, yelling at them actually makes it worse. Not surprising, right? So if their emotions are like this, you need to be calm. If you want to help them get calm, you need to be calm. And so we also have some like kind of little scenarios that they go through to practice this. So then what can you do? Well, this may feel overwhelming. You talk about all these things. Well, the truth is just small steps can make a big difference. So how could you build mental skills in sport? Well, I would start with sleep. And I think we have a lot of shame about sleep, a lot of people telling you to do these things. I would say make sleep a priority. And so thinking about sleep and how it affects your performance. We had an athlete who was working with us on some of this work, and she was reading all these articles, and I found it fascinating because she ended up, she was like, this has actually changed my own behavior. And I was like, well, tell me more. What do you mean? She said, well, I was had some more work to do for school. But then I said, I should go to bed because it's 11 and then I'll feel better tomorrow. My brain will be working better tomorrow. And so I'll have good brain tomorrow to be able to work on this project. And I was like, oh my God, she's seeing sleep is a priority because it impacts my performance. So there's many, many things you can do. Going to bed just a little bit earlier, thinking about, how can you rearrange your day so that you can prioritize sleep. And there's many times that you don't have this luxury, and that's okay too. It's trying to like do your best effort in this. Um, from the psychological perspective, so the number two thing I would say is working on breathing. This can be any level that you want. So it certainly could be, uh, you know, breathing for 1 to 2 minutes, like practicing doing some controlled breathing for 1 to 2 minutes. So, when you wake up in the morning, it could be right before you start practice. I do think thinking about incorporating this when it's going to help you from a performance perspective makes it more powerful. So I found this for me, like for years, I've tried to like, how do I incorporate meditation? Well, of course you've got a million things you're trying to do. You're trying to get exercise, you're trying to eat right, like you're trying to get all your work done. And what I found was really helpful is when I was like, oh, my brain is just not working. I'm trying to do this paper. I'm trying to like, study for this thing. And then I said, well, I'm going to do a minute of meditation or just mindful breathing, and it will help me get into that state. And that has been much more successful for me. So I do think incorporating it in that way can be helpful. And it also doesn't have to even be 1 to 2 minutes. So people can have talked about using just a few deep breaths to help you kind of reset and get into a moment. So some physicians actually will do this before they go into the room. So you close your eyes, you take feet on the ground, one deep breath, enter the room. That you can do this before you have a free throw. So you can take a few deep breaths, reset, and then go into the next moment. Um, and I'm going to give you an example of that on the next slide. We'll get into that. And then the last one, connection. So create a community for yourself. So this can mean whatever it means for you. So it may be finding a running partner. It may be, comparing notes with someone that you're running the marathon with. It may be, talking to people about what you're struggling with. And, you're like, oh, I'm hitting the wall at a mile. I don't know what's going on. But using that social support as a way of helping you be more successful as an athlete.
One of the breathing techniques that I use, especially.
So I'm going to pause this just for a second just to explain who this is. So this is Kerry Carter. He played football for Stanford, and then he played for the Seahawks and then the Montreal Alouettes, and he currently works for Atavis. So he has retired from football, and he now works on trying to make football safer by working on safer approaches to tackling. And he's a lovely individual and has been working with us on this project because he uses a lot of these kinds of approaches himself. So, as a professional athlete, he used visualization, he used meditation, he used mindfulness, and he does a lot of this currently. And so, he uses a lot of breathing techniques that he finds very helpful. And when you get into breathing, this is a very there's many different approaches, and some people like to use certain types of breathing. His is, I think, is pretty simple, and so that's why it's a nice one that I thought I could introduce you to. And this is just a very like 1 minute breathing exercise. So I'm just going to have him um,
Especially
tell
when
you.
you're in a high stress situation and you're trying to calm things down. It's this idea of control, right? You're trying to regain control of your breath and your body. And so you're going 4 in, hold, 4 out, hold, and it's long hold. So you feel that you go in, you hold it, you're in control. You're controlling the flow as it goes out, and at the end, you're controlling it again. So it gives you the opportunity and the perception of control, and that really gives you ownership of that moment. And so you kind of get out of the state of mind where something else is happening that's taking your attention or control, and it brings it back into you.
So what I really like about that video is that it is about control and focus and not about relaxation. And that is what's helpful in an athlete context. And when we started to do this work, we tried to find videos of athletes meditating that would be useful, and we couldn't find them. So we made them. So we have that one with Carrie. We have a couple of other ones we made with a football coach up in Alaska. And we're continuing to work on that area because I do think thinking about how this can work for athletes is really powerful. So that's all I have. I really wanted this to be a quick run through, and then I thought I'm happy to field questions if people have them. And I wanted to also give you the opportunity if people are interested. We have this project Mentally Strong. We actually have like built out this whole platform and activities, and we're piloting it with schools in the Washington area. So if people are interested in learning more, or if you want to collaborate, or if there are other ideas that you have, please reach out. So if you scan that QR code, it'll just have some contact information and some basic questions, and we'll get back to you. And as I said, I'm Sara Chrisman, and the program that we're developing that's the website, but it's you have to have a password to get in. So we could talk more.